TSPN. And now, authors, writers, books, and beyond. This program also streams live on the web at tspntv.com and can be watched on demand at tspntv.com or TSPN TV's YouTube channel. And now, authors, writers, books, and beyond.
Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Kathy Boyd-Fuller, and I'm really glad to have you with us this evening. This is Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond TV show. And for the October show today, I have three wonderful guests I'm thrilled about. I think you're going to be having a party with us tonight. So I'm going to start introducing on my right here. This is Marcy Seither. And on my left, Kathy Elliott. And next to Kathy is Michelle Yule. Hello, ladies. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having us. We're so excited.
I know.
We're going to start just chatting away, and I'd like to start with you, Michelle.
Okay.
Share what you'd like to about your books.
I have had an extraordinary year. All four of my books were released this year, and
Yeah.
well, except for this one, A Log Cabin Christmas Collection, was a re-release because it was on the New York Times bestseller list 2 years ago, and they thought they'd run it through again. My first little novel came out in February, Bridging Two Hearts, the story of a massage therapist at the Hotel del Coronado in San Diego who's terrified of the Coronado Bridge, who falls in love with a Navy SEAL who doesn't think he's afraid of anything. Texas Brides Collection, these are novellas, 20,000 words each, and this is a story, An Inconvenient Gamble, based on a family history about a man who came back from the Civil War and had to come to terms with his past and a bad decision. And my most recent one, which is one I want to really talk about, is The Gold Rush Christmas out of a Pioneer Christmas collection. It's the story of the Alaskan Gold Rush. A pair of twins and the boy next door go hunting, and they run into sporting women. Those are my stories.
I love the pages on that.
This is called Deckel. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Kathy's a librarian, so you might know things like that.
I wasn't actually a librarian.
Oh, okay.
Move on.
Deckel covers, yes.
I mean, it
and
really sets the tone for the
it feels
time.
like a log cabin. I mean,
Yeah.
it really does, the rough edges, and it's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it has that primitive look.
Well,
Very
I
good.
kind of feel like, a woman who gave birth to Elizabeth Taylor. I wrote the story, but the book is so gorgeous.
It is gorgeous.
But I had nothing to do with it.
It's always nice. to
Barbara
have
did a nice
yourself like
job.
They did.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you. Kathy, you want to share?
Sure. My first book is called A Vase of Mistaken Identity, and it's a cozy mystery.
I read it.
That's fun.
All right, yay! And it is actually associated with this book. It has a soft quilting theme, and in the back of the book are directions to make this quilt, which was the quilt that the protagonist makes throughout the book. It's called Kitty in the Cabin, and it's based on a log cabin and a 9-patch with a variation on a 9-patch. So if you read the book at the end, you can also make the same quilt as my main character. The second book is a continuity series book, and it's an Annie's Attic mystery, and it's called Medals in the Attic, and it has to do with some medals, some war medals that Annie finds in the attic, in her grandmother's attic, but they don't belong to her family, and whose are they? And it starts a little mystery going, and she kind of gets into a little ruckus. And I had a lot of fun writing this because I'm a Navy brat, and so I love doing research for it and finding the heroes and revisiting some of the things that are going on. And then I just finished, October 1st was my date, my deadline, and I turned in a new book, another cozy mystery, to Abington Press, and it's called A Stitch in Crime. And it won't be out, though, until January of 2015, so we have a while to wait. But that's all right. It was so much fun to write, and it featured the same characters as the ones in this book. And there's also a quilt associated with this, A Stitch in Crime. It's another cat-themed quilt with a fence rail pattern called Tail in the Rail. And it will be available either in the book, I'm not sure if that will happen, or I will make it available online for folks who read the book and are interested. So,
Three cozy mysteries.
3 cozy mysteries.
And congratulations on just getting past that deadline.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's a big weight off. It's a victory.
Yay! And Marcy.
I am mostly an article writer. I tell people I'm a mom who writes, and I've written probably hundreds of articles for local papers, and I also write for Guideposts magazine. I just sold my 11th piece to them since
Wow.
2010. I
a
was
coup.
one of the Guidepost story winners, and but I do have 2 books coming out. I have this one coming out, Empty Nest, from Beacon Hill, Empty Nest Strategies to Help Your Kids Take Flight. And this is a great book for parents whose kids are in that transition of leaving, because we have 9 months to prepare ourselves when our kids are coming into the world, and yet it seems like we don't have any time to prepare when they are released out into the world, so when they leave our home. So this is a great book. It has a lot of chapters that deal with military-minded, siblings matter, college-bound, transition tensions, and teachable moments. And the last chapter is me, the Lord, and a container of caterpillars. So,
I like that.
so that's this was a book that I wish that I had had when our first one left.
Nice.
We have 6 kids, and I don't need something when the last kid leaves. I needed something when the first one was
Yes,
leaving.
absolutely.
And so this one addresses that. And the other book I have coming out is called The Adventures of Pearlie Monroe. It is a historical fiction for 4th graders. This is actually not traditional published. This is just finishing up its Kickstarter campaign, so I'm kind of excited about that. This book I started about 7 years ago, and I wasn't a good enough writer, so I wrote it. I didn't even know what questions to ask, so I think everybody here has been to Mount Herman. I've taken as many classes as I could at Mount Herman. I went through the Jerry Jenkins correspondence course.
Oh, wow.
And I'm ready to launch this. The release date is January 24th, in time for Gold History.
Nice.
So anyway, I'm excited
Perfect
about that.
timing.
And then this is not a book, but it's a little, speaking of Mount Herman, Lisa Bogart and I will be heading up a morning track at Mount Herman called Heading in the Right Direction. And it's for writers who aren't sure where they fit in the writing industry anymore, because it's changing so fast.
Absolutely.
So I have traditional and non-traditional, and I'm just excited that I wrote something that was longer than 750 words.
And how did that feel, Marcy?
Overwhelming. It was overwhelming.
That's great.
I liked it.
Good. Good.
Ladies, I would, I know bits and pieces of you, Michelle, you and I kind of meeting for the first time. Could you share a little bit about yourself personally?
Well, I'm the mother of only 4 children. I have 4 terrific children, 2 perfect daughter-in-laws, a wonderful husband, and 5 adorable grandchildren. My husband is a Navy commander, retired Navy commander submarines, and so we spent 21 years traveling around the country, around the world, and it was a wonderful experience. We went to 14 different churches. So I can write across denominations because I've gone to church in so many different denominations. We lived in all 4 quarters of the United States, and we ended in Hawaii. So I feel like I've had a really broad expansive experience with different types of peoples and different types of the country. And it's great as a writer because I can pull off something from somewhere else. I'm also a genealogist. 2 of my stories are based on family history, which is also perfect because you can find names, you can find stories, you can find elements of history, and it's been a great, wonderful experience and perfect preparation to being a writer.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Wonderful. Wow.
Kathy?
I'm next.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, we need to talk later. I am a Navy brat, and so my dad was a Pearl Harbor survivor. You know,
Wow.
Yes.
I'm in there with you.
We were there.
I am a mom. My daughter is grown and has, she and her husband have produced 2, the other perfect grandchildren. Besides
Mine are
this-
adorable.
Oh, adorable. Oh, okay. And they just have enriched my life in a way that I can't even express. I love to collect antiques. I'm a musician. and a music leader at my church, and just a rather not a totally rookie writer now. I have some things published and been wanting to write a long time, and my time kind of came when my daughter got married, and I knew we had some new times coming up. So
Wide open. And Marcy.
I am a mom of 6, and I never thought I would be a writer, so it's kind of an amazing journey. It's one that started when I was writing memos to my mom and dad, and my mom said, "You really should get some of this published." And I said, "Well, it's only funny to you because it happened to us." She said, "Oh no, everybody in the whole office enjoys these." And so that's how I started writing. I took in one of my pieces to the local paper, and from that they asked if I would write a family humor column, and I've always loved stories, and I'm excited to finally get to share some in a book form.
Any military background?
We had one son who was he was a special op Marine, so 5 years, and then my husband is, not as lean, not as mean, still a Marine. So,
So we're all military families. Wow, my husband's retired Air Force. My oldest son is about to retire, I hope, Air Force. And so children. Well, before we come back, talk about some of the public things I haven't discussed on July.
TSPN. You're watching your local television network, TSPN, and now back to Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond. This program also streams live on the web at tspntv.com and can be watched on demand at tspntv.com or TSPN TV's YouTube channel. And now back to Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond.
I have Michelle and Kathy and Marcy. We're going to talk a little bit about what we like to read. I know a lot of you out there are readers, and one of the questions I've gotten lately is, we read a lot, so if we kind of zoom in a little, it's kind of hard for writers to zoom in on that, because I think we read as much as we write. What do you think?
I probably am the least reader. I read a lot of magazines, and a lot of newspapers. But that's what I write. And so I do love a great mystery. Somebody's got to die in scene 1. I don't care for too much romance, but that's just probably because I like somebody dying, I guess. I don't know what it is. But when I was a kid and people talk about they just couldn't get enough to read, I was the kid who you would have to read an extra book to get an A in English. I would just make the book up. Like, I would just make up the title, the plot, the characters, the author, the publisher, and it was before Google, so I just would make sure that it never was too interesting that the teacher would want to read it. I would just say, I loved it, kind of drug in the middle, or the main character was boring. But
That's funny.
Yeah, so I always loved stories, and I think that's the part for me. I think that writers, it's not so much reading all the time, it's the fact that you're creative and that you're always imagining. And so for me, even though I didn't grow up being a voracious reader, I was always a story lover,
And teller, actually.
Well, and I've tried to explain to my husband, he seems to think I'm afraid of things all the time. And I said, it's part of my job. I have to envision not just what's happening now, but what could happen, because I'm always supposed to put my characters in peril.
Sure.
He doesn't really buy that. He still thinks I'm too afraid of things. But it's part of the job description.
Yeah.
I think
That's
so.
very good.
What do you think?
I agree. And as a writer, I just call myself a thief of life. People will say, tell a funny story, and I'll say, can I use that? And I do. I mean, the Mexican meatloaf is from a gal who talked about her sister's meatloaf that she put in the oven with no pan, and it just fell through. And so I stuck it in the book, because you can't make this stuff up. I guess you can, but it's easier if somebody else makes it up for you.
Yeah.
So, but I just really enjoy reading many different genres, but primarily mystery, thriller sort of things. I always think I don't like romance, but I love Jane Austen, and I love a lot of things that maybe would be considered romance, so maybe I do.
And I do want to say that too. I have to say, I would say I'm not a romance reader at all, but I do love ones with a good theme. And I think that is where I think that it comes back to craft.
Sure.
It
And
does.
so
it
if
does.
you-
Any good story.
Yeah, if it has a great theme, then and it's a well-told story, then if they kiss at the end, that's okay.
So I grew up surrounded by books. There was 7 sisters that our father was a teacher, and we were read to, and then we were encouraged to read to them. So there was an involvement. There was also the time under the covers with the flashlight.
Sure.
And, in the bunk bed, the room of bunk beds. My parents stacked their children. It's true. But that gave way for stories. My older sister used to put her hand down in the middle of the night, terrorize me, and I used that once.
The Stackable Sisters, that sounds like a book.
Actually, okay, I have to give Kim credit for that.
Oh.
Because I ran into her at the local furniture store, and they were buying bunk beds for their brood, and she stacked. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, see, same thing as you. You always have a little tablet, and
Right? Yeah.
we're always writing it in our head. Okay, move us on a little to what we're doing today. You have a very interesting job.
My job or my book?
Your job is really interesting, I think.
I'm sure your book is interesting too.
I'm sure all your books are interesting.
I work part-time as the editorial assistant at Books and Such Literary Agency, and I am right in the middle of hearing all the things that go on in the publishing industry. It's a wonderful spot, a catbird seat, and I work with terrific people and great writers, and it's a wonderful job.
That's great.
Helps to be happy in your work, huh?
It's fun to go to work.
I'm sure you're appreciated by the clients there. You saved my bacon earlier in the week, so yeah.
Yeah, actually, for Viewerland, Kathy and I are agented with agents that Michelle gets to work with.
I do. Wonderful people. Very knowledgeable about what's happening in the industry. The book publishing industry is changing every single day, and so it's an important spot to have people on your side who are following what's going on, because it's bewildering. It can very well be bewildering.
Sure.
Can you, and sometimes you chime in on the Books and Such blog. I've seen you chime in a couple times.
I do occasionally. I'm the fill-in when
Right.
everyone's on vacation.
But that's, along with that job, I mean, that's a great exposure, I think, for you to
well, I
be
write
out
my
there as
own
well.
blog twice a week,
Yeah.
and I have a degree in English, and I was a journalist as well. I like to write, and
Obviously.
yeah, well, yeah, I guess it would be true, but I love the putting together of ideas and stories and painting pictures. The article writing, I mean, the blog is wonderful for me.
Yeah.
So.
I know, because I follow your blog.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I follow the Books and Such blog too.
Yeah.
Which is
faithfully
pretty
that.
phenomenal. I mean,
It is.
they just really, Wendy just had another, I thought she couldn't outdo herself but it's almost like a part 3 to
Yes.
2 others she did that was so informative as a client, very helpful to listen to what she says, learn from her expertise, because I have a lot of gaps to fill in. Yeah, and that's another part of the industry that I think, I was in nonfiction writing for a decade first, before I switched. My first 10 years at Mount Herman, I was with David Kopp and, Marley Alec. I don't know if you remember her. Yeah, just wonderful. And then I kind of switched genres. It's always, like you, but I wrote it in my head. My sisters and I, we told our stories out loud. And we produced plays after the music circus every year in the backyard. I mean,
It's just like in Little Women.
we actually did that. And there were no boys to play the boy, so that was like bribery. No one wanted to be the boy. We all wanted to be the girls.
Sure.
And then my concern, I'd like you guys to talk about, is for the kids in the world today. It's such a different world than what we grew up in. And what's your take on that? Do you think that it's better, worse, or somewhere in the middle?
There's nothing new under the sun. So it's just a different manifestation. But I think our society tends to be discouraging, and we write within the inspirational market, and the point is to be encouraging and to give people hope.
Right.
Or at least that's what I try to do in my
I agree.
stories.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing for kids is that so much technology has come around that everything is so self-absorbed as far as, you know, you don't even have to listen to, remember we used to get the vinyl records, you listened to the whole vinyl record, you didn't just pick and choose what you wanted. And so now trying to capture kids with reading is a difficult thing, and trying to instill the value of reading to your kids for parents instead of just sitting them down with a touch screen game or whatever. You know, it is a balance, and for writers, you know, we see the value of that.
Yes.
And I can't just encourage parents enough to like read to their kids.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I just echo what you said, and I really appreciate. As a mom, I don't know that I was that much of a reader to my children. I was more like, okay, everybody to bed. I'm going to go read now, you know. But I see my daughter, who grew up not that much of a reader, reading to her children every night. Even the baby, who's now 2, when he was just in arms, she was reading to him to start that that little reading literary culture within his life. And they love books, and they love to receive books, and they look forward to that time and to reading. And I just you know, commend moms who take the time and do it, because it's not always convenient, and you're tired and you want to go to bed yourself.
Well, you know, I've read the Little House on the Prairie series, whole series, 5 times out loud. So ask me about anything.
You probably know about the peanut butter on the show.
I also have a friend who, in their household, they homeschooled their children, and they would, as a family, sit around in the evening. Instead of watch TV, they would read a biography of Thomas Edison or something. And the children were always learning, and they looked forward to literature of a higher level.
Yes.
You know, and their standards were set high from the beginning, and I so respect that. I didn't do that, but I so respect that.
Well, Marcy, how did you come to write about Pearlie Monroe?
Well, I went to Coloma with our kids about 7 years ago, and it was a field trip. And when you go, you have the little trifold brochures at the exhibits. And I pulled one of those brochures, and I read about this black couple who had been brought to the mining industry to California by their owner in 1849 after he had sold their baby. And the next year, that was 1849, 1850, California was admitted into the Union as a freed state. So Nancy Gooch was freed, and Peter, and they began to earn money to buy their baby back.
Oh, wow.
And 21 years later, she was able to send for Andrew, Sarah Ellen, and their 2 young boys, Pearlie and Grant.
Oh, my God.
And this is based on a true story. And the following year, I went back and I said, I need more information about this black family and this mother's love. And the gal picked up the brochure, and she goes, well, we've got this trifold brochure. I said, is that it? A trifold brochure? You've got this beautiful story of human perseverance despite adversity, and you've got a trifold brochure? And a man in time period clothing said, I agree, somebody needs to write that story. I said, well, I'm a writer, but I'm not that kind of a writer. So
I'm glad you did that.
So he followed me out to my car and said, if you get started, I'll get you in the library.
Great, thank you. We're going to come back in a little bit. I hate to cut you off.
Oh,
'cause
that's
it's
okay.
absolutely fascinating. Join us when we come back. Thanks for being with us for part 2.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN. Television Network, TSPN, and now back to Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond. This program also streams live on the web at tspntv.com and can be watched on demand at tspntv.com or TSPN TV's YouTube channel. And now back to Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Marcy was just finishing up a really interesting chat about this wonderful book. Can you show it again? You really ought to look for this when it comes out in January.
It'll be coming out in January. You can get it on Amazon.com, or you can go to my website, marcyseither.com, and it will be there as
Can
well.
you spell Seither for them?
Yes, it's Seither, S as in Sam, E-I, T as in Tom, H-E-R as in Robert,
And spell Marcy, too.
M-A-R-C-I.
It's a little different.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And then she has some aprons I asked her to bring. and share. You want to tell the story about how you got started on those?
I got started with that. First of all, I love creating things, and I'm having just such a hard time not touching stuff. I'm just a tactile person. In fact, I even call it Fabric Fondle Fridays, when I just go in and just touch the fabric. But this is a friend of ours had a book come out, Sarah Sundin. She's also with Books and Such. And Sarah and I met probably about 12 years ago, 10 years ago. And we've been friends ever since. And we would send each other our manuscripts, what we had worked on. And there was also another gal, Marcy Weidemuller. We would switch manuscripts. And when Sarah's first book came out, I wanted to make her a gift that would be really special. So I revised an apron pattern, and I came up with this sassy retro flounce apron. And I had her book cover printed on fabric, and I put it on the pocket. And I made one of these for myself, I made one for Sarah, and I made one for the local quilt store, because I knew that the quilt store had a lot of readers and they had a book club. So of course they put this in their window and they filled the pocket with Sarah's bookmarks, and they ended up buying a box of books.
Nice.
And the point being, sometimes you have to go where the readers are, not just where books are.
Sure.
And then I designed an apron also for Lorraine Snelling. This is the Blessing apron pattern. So this is another apron, prairie themed, and same thing, it has her logo on it.
Nice.
So I created a line for her. But now that I have my own book, I'm so excited. I got to make, the other night I made my very own apron. And of course, I wear these all the time. My kids even said, I noticed when you don't have an apron on. And this has my book cover on it. So I will be wearing this all over, probably to the store.
Yes, yes.
So anyway, and it's that's how I got into sewing. And like this is another sewing project that I did for Sarah. And she filled this with medical supplies. It was just a little
cute.
medical kit.
Each one of your aprons has a very unique personality of its own.
It does. It does. And I have the Miss Nancy apron that is just the white muslin. And this one is, of course, to go with the Pearlie Monroe book. And this was one of my packages for the Kickstarter program. So anyway, that's, and then my little cup.
I love these. These are too
So
cute with the
everybody
little
gets one of
buttons
those.
in the back. You should show that too.
Anyway,
Get that?
that's
Little buttons in the back that hook. So you see writers have other creative events. We're not just slaves at our desk, although sometimes we feel like that. There are other avenues between the quilts and the aprons, and a lot of what you do at the agency is extremely creative to me. You read through a lot of the query letters.
Well, all the agents read the query letters, certainly, and we learn what people are writing about and what they're interested in. We're really thankful that the vampire craze is dying down.
Oh, thank goodness. Wow.
I don't know how many different Harry Potter versions the
Really?
agents have looked at. You can see what's popular at any given time. So, yeah.
Do you sometimes get something in totally different?
Of course.
Well, I have to tell you, lately I've been feeling like there's a lot of the same. And it's been a little discouraging because we've stayed in that werewolf, vampire, zombie land for a long time.
Well, book publishers have to sell books, and they have to sell what people will buy, and that's how crazes begin. I mean, Lorraine's Blessing series is not a vampire series, but it's a wonderful example of how readers come to love her characters. I mean, Lorraine has practically, you should have Lorraine on, a whole village in North Dakota based around her book, and it's wonderful. Also very creative in the things that she comes up with. So.
And how long have you worked with her?
With Lorraine has been with Books and Such for I don't know how many years.
Probably
I've been
the
at Books and
beginning.
Such for nearly 10.
I've met her at Mount Hermon several times. She's lovely.
And she's one of the co-writers of this book, as a matter of fact, and a lovely, lovely woman. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to touch on something else. A lot of times we get together, we critique, have critique groups. Some people prefer not to. Some people prefer not to share their work in that way. I find it very helpful to have that other set of eyes
Absolutely.
and get outside of myself and let go of it. It's really a letting go process. And in other ways, one of my viewers emailed me with a really interesting question that I couldn't quite answer because my books are children's books, ages 4 to 8. The novels aren't out yet that Wendy represents. And her question was, well, how are you going to make that transition? I don't know yet because I haven't made it yet. I don't have a contract yet. And so when we go from that one genre to the other, I know I'll be writing in the contemporary women's genre for Wendy. And I'm wondering what you guys, do you want a genre jump sometimes or stay in your little home base, like you said, with the nonfiction? That's what you read because that's what you're writing.
Are you asking me that?
Yes, I am. Yes. She had a good question.
It is a good question. Actually, this is a question that's come up recently in a couple of different posts, and I would just have to say there's something about genre hopping. Why? I mean, I wrote a children's book, Pumper John, or I wrote this book. I'm not going to be a children's fiction writer. So it is a genre hop, but it's not a career move. It's just that this was a story that was on my heart, and the byproduct ended up being a book. And so I think as Christian authors, especially when you commit your work to the Lord, if He chooses to have it published, that's awesome. And if He doesn't, maybe you were the one who needed the lesson. So maybe that's dumb, but I just think that sometimes we get so worried about genre hopping. This isn't a career for me. I still want to write more of these books, and I have a prequel already kind of lined out for that. But I think if you do have something that's put on your heart, it's okay to pursue it to the best of your ability. And if it gets published, that's great.
I have kind of maybe I hadn't even thought about it before, but maybe something along the lines of what you're going through, Kathy. Because before this first Cozy Mystery was ever published, I wrote and had published 10 children's books for a and I can't remember if I was represented at the time, but it was a work for hire. It was a particular educational company that was looking for authors, and my friend Roxanne Henke, my author friend, said, I'm not really interested in this email, but maybe you would be. And so I had a few things published, a couple of anthologies and so on, a whole lot of book reviews for the Christian Library Journal, but I didn't really have anything too meaty. And so I read it, and they needed some new authors for some children's books, and they showed for the classroom. You're not going to find them in Barnes & Noble, but just in the classroom. And so I took a shot, and they liked what I put out there and hired me on, and I wrote 10 books for them, which was great. I bought a car. It paid for my car. It was a used car, but I drove it till last year. And then I never really thought of myself as a children's author. I thought of myself as someone building clips. And so when it was time to go selling a book, then a novel, it looked good. My resume looked good because I had articles, and I had reviews, and I had anthologies, and I had all these children's books as well. And that says to an editor, oh, so she's met the standard for these other things. Maybe we want to look at her, So I never really thought about that, and so I guess I made a transition, but it was a unconscious one,
Kind of natural.
Yeah, because this is what I was aiming for, and everything else I did along the way was
part of the journey.
Yeah, building pillars underneath my novels.
I know that it seems like the YA market is really booming at this point. My book club's reading more YA.
My favorite book of this year is a YA book.
What book?
Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein. It's a World War II story. I didn't think I was going to like it as I started it, but you had to read all the way to the last page, and that twisted and turned. Very, very popular book. So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we read The Blue Umbrella and followed it up with The Violet Flash, which I was surprised that I liked them.
I don't know that.
Yeah, and I think they're CBA market too. That surprised me, for me, because that's not a genre I would pick. If someone else hadn't have picked it, I wouldn't have read it. And I would have really missed out. It's a kind of a jump out of my comfort zone for reading, because I cozy up, pour the tea, curl up, and you can watch your TV, honey, but I've got my book. I'm not interested in the TV.
The YAs tend to take on more controversial subjects, but the length isn't very big. And I think it's the length that's part of the issue. Novellas are selling quite often now because they're length. You can read my story in an hour and 20 minutes. A YA novel you can probably read in a couple hours. I think that in a society that's so pressed for time as our society is, to get a great story in and then be done is a good thing, or they feel it's a good thing.
Time is more and more of an issue.
And I think that's a good point. The investment that the reader is wanting to have some enjoyment without making that huge investment of their time.
Well, we're going to leave you with that interesting point and come back and talk in closing just a little bit more about other aspects of our writing. Thank you for joining us.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN. You're watching your local television network, TSPN, and now back to Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond. This program also streams live on the web at tspntv.com and can be watched on demand at tspntv.com or TSPN TV's YouTube channel. And now back to Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond.
Hi, welcome back for our final segment. I'm going to talk a little bit first about the bookstore that's right next door. Hine & Company, Wolf Hine runs that bookstore. It is a magical place. I used to homeschool there. Upstairs, downstairs, we'd pack a lunch and we'd literally spend the day there, and we never got away bookless. We left with a little stack. But he has done some marvelous renovations in there. There's the Murder Movie Mystery Theater now, and I think he just had his first production. They have vintage props over there, a little steampunk. Not my thing, but it's a lot of other people's.
Yeah, it is.
Very big. And he has more antiques and has diversified to a point where he has the new, the used, and the rare books, which are my big. I just could live in his rare book section forever. So you want to try, come on down, go past the little doorway here, and plan to spend the day. There's a couple restaurants on the street, but Eric and Brian are there to give you a hand. And then watch the local news for productions. I will be taking my husband to the next one. And we're going to get back into something. We had a really neat little discussion over the break, which you guys miss out on. It's so sad. And Michelle was sharing some really interesting facts on the research for this book. Can you share again?
I wrote a book about the gold rush, my novella, The Gold Rush Christmas. In the course of writing the novella, I discovered that a wonderful story about the initial missionary who went into Skagway, Alaska during the gold rush, built a church, and was called in to speak with a sporting woman or a prostitute who was dying. He read her the scriptures, and she died in peace. But then the madam of the brothel asked them to hold the funeral at his church, which was a little bit intimidating. Brought him in, 50 prostitutes there in his church congregation, and he preached to them about Mary Magdalene, about you can change your life, you don't have to be stuck here. 1897, Alaska. They all were weeping, it was carrying on, and he went for a walk because he was the only man in there and he needed out for a little bit. Ran into a steamship captain who said, "What's going on?" He tells the story and he says, my ship is empty, I brought everyone in. Anybody who wants to go back to Seattle, I'll take them back for free tomorrow. Oh, but they'd have to go back to the same life. And the miner standing next to him said, "I'll give you $1,000, take them." So he went back into the church, made his offer, and 30 women volunteered. But they wanted their things. So they had to get the sheriff and go and claim their possessions. They brought him back, and 10 more wanted to go.
Wow.
40 women went back to Seattle the next day, leaving prostitution behind.
That's
Amazing.
We got it into the story just in time.
Wow. Glad you found it.
It was wonderful.
What
It
a
was
great
wonderful.
story, and true.
Yes, true.
Amazing.
I think that kind of touches on why we really write. We write in the CBA market to share the hope of salvation in Christ, and that was providential.
Perfect.
You were just willing to do the work. We have to be willing to do the work, the research. It's a lot of research. I enjoy it. I don't know very many authors or writers that don't. I find it challenging, and then when you come across something that's absolutely phenomenal, And now a new generation is going to hear all about it all over again.
I think so. And I was down in that bookstore before I came in today, and I bought a book for research. So there you go. Used bookstores are great places.
Yeah, I love it too. He has a little gold mine over there.
He does.
You just recently did a lot of research too.
I did, and your story reminds me in a completely tweaked way. I mean, your story is wonderful. I kind of hate to follow it with my story, but for the new book, I was researching the gold rush.
Oh.
Because in my little gold rush town, my mythical gold rush town of Larkindale, there was a big quilt display that was going on at the same time as a gold rush display in my museum. And so I wanted to find things to put inside the display cases, so I got into a lot of gold rush equipment and so on, and they had a lot of fun figuring out which kind of lights they used in the mines, and gold pans, of course, and so on. And I'm filling up the display case, and I think, maybe some jewelry. I wonder what kind of, and I go in there and I find this beautiful quartz and gold jewelry. You probably know about that, because they had it in Alaska too. And it's certainly a local sort of thing here, because it's a California mine thing. And so anyway, I saw some antique gold and quartz jewelry, and I just was, and of course it was $5,000 to buy it. And I thought, if I ever find any of that jewelry for $30 at a yard sale, I'm picking it up. I'm going to buy it. And so, but I was looking for more, and I looked on eBay. There was nothing I could afford, but I just was entranced by it. And then recently, after my book was done, I went and visited with Kathy up at their cabin at Tahoe, and she wanted to take me to the Potlatch, which is, what town is that?
It's in Incline Village.
Incline Village. And so we went over there, and I walk right in. The display case is full of quartz and gold. And I said, quartz and gold, right in front of me. And the gal said, you know what that is? And so I started telling her about the book, and she wants the book. And of course, it won't be out for a year. But I ended up putting a beautiful quartz and gold ring on layaway, and so 2 more payments. But that was really fun, and I would never have known about. I would have been a lot richer had I not done that research, apparently.
I feel like a bad influence.
No, I already knew about the quartz and gold. But that was really fun, actually. And it'll always, whenever I do wear it, it'll remind me of the gold rush scene in my book and so on.
That particular
It's really
store, Aaron and his wife Lisa have a great kids section.
They do.
Yeah, they have a really great kids section
neat-
in there.
neat place.
They carry mine, but he has one of the biggest varieties I've seen for a smaller section, which is nice to see today, because more stores are toning it down, sizing down their sections rather than actually building it up. Well, we've talked children's, and I could stay there forever. My heart's in the novel. For the first 10 years, I always wrote about prayer.
Wow.
And I think I'm more, not that I didn't pray then, but I really felt called to write about it in a way I never had before. It's a thread in my books, and not in a way that you hope the reader sees as being thumped on the head. But that kind of brings me into what I'd really like to acknowledge here at the end, because we've all been to Mount Hermon, and you mentioned Jerry Jenkins, Christian Writers Guild. I couldn't have done this without that. I'm always still refining, refining, editing, rewrite. But those conferences, and that's where I met Wendy, offer so much that I think without it I would have been lost.
Right.
Yeah. And again, I have a degree in English literature, but all of the writing I've learned has been in Christian conferences or in the journalism world. If you want to be a writer who publishes a book, you really need to go to a writer's conference.
Right.
There you will learn about how the publishing process works. You'll learn how to put together your proposal, but you'll also learn ways of capturing a reader that you don't learn necessarily in college.
That's true.
But I think something even better than just what you learn. I mean, we met at Mount Hermon, and it was right when Nate was being deployed to Afghanistan. And being a writer is kind of a lonely thing.
Right.
And I just cannot stress how important it is to have know that you have a sister who has your back.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going through a tough time, you know that any of your writer friends who you could call, and you know that they have your back. And I just think that as much as it is in the craft, just feeling supported in that area
It's
means
huge.
means a lot as
Right.
well. I just can't, Michelle was there and just was so supportive, and I just am so thankful for the friends that I've made from the Christian
I
Writers
agree.
Guild.
That's how I met Kathy in
Yes.
08. I was on the top floor of the Azalea. She was on the, I don't even think it's called the Azalea anymore. She was on the bottom. We met in passing.
That's right. That's right.
I was there with another
I
friend.
love Azalea.
Yeah, I did too. I love the Azalea. Love the Azalea. And my son
great
just
place.
returned today from a tour of duty that was on top of another one. And so she had been praying.
Yeah, that was
Actually, I put
neat.
it on our agency blog. And now those prayers are, this was a toughie one for me. I don't know why. I should be so used to it by now. He's almost retired, but I'm not.
It's always your baby.
Yeah, he still is. I mean,
in harm's way. It's
yes, but
hard on a mom's part, for sure.
I find a great interest in the books you write about the Navy SEAL. He works with Navy SEALs, so I would. I'm drawn to the military. I'm sorry, just part of life. Not at all in my life before. I don't know before you met your husband.
I'm the daughter of a naval officer.
Okay, I had suspicions, but you know.
Amen.
My kids are Air Force brats.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful. That
Me
was a
too.
wonderful life for us.
Yes.
That was and it creeps into my writing a little bit every now and then. I shouldn't. I don't want to use the word creeps. I'm picky about words.
Yeah.
It filters in. That's a nicer
Right,
word.
right.
Well, ladies, my group meets at Clark's Corner in Ione. It's a little out of the way hub where we critique. We have been for 5 years, and actually we're celebrating 5 years with Craig. It's kind of a big deal. He's an amazing man and has brought into our little rural community something we didn't have. He hosts, I'll make a little plug here for my annual literary read, where we have guest readers, and I bring in a musician. We exhibit art and photography the whole month of the read, so this month. And he just had a cycling event, so something to keep in mind before you leave town if you have time. And we're winding down. We're at the end of it. Goes fast, doesn't it? You have to admit it.
I know.
When you first come, it's going to be forever, but it really does wind down fast. I cannot thank you enough for coming. I am so grateful. I prayed to get you here, so I'm grateful to God for the
That's a
answer.
Pleasure.
Get me home.
Completely.
Yeah, he gives nice gifts. He just is very thoughtful and kind and generous. And hope you have a safe journey home. You both are going
you.
elsewhere. And Kathy's staying with me.
I am.
Yeah.
The party continues at my house. And I hope you, the readers, enjoy some of these books. Can you show them again one more time? We're just going off the air.
Sure.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Really happy to have you.
Thanks.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.